Is it just me, or are web browsers sexy again? I mean, Atlassian just dropped 600 million to acquire the browser company. GPT rolled out Atlas. You got Perplexity, Brave. The list goes on. With all this activity, I wanted to sit down with someone actually driving this innovation. So today, I'm here with Neil Henderson, CEO of Shift, which actually lets people build their own browser, kind of like Legos for your digital life. The company also just released a fascinating consumer survey that uncovers how trends like digital burnout, AI, and social media overload are actually driving this renewed interest in switching browsers. But we'll get into that in a little bit. First, Neil, thanks for joining. And for those who aren't familiar, just tell us a little bit about yourself and Shift and the road you've been on.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Mike, and happy to be here. I'm the CEO of Shift. We are the only Canadian-made browser. We're a 60-person team here in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and we've actually been building browsers for over a decade. But to your point, Mike, browsers have been a sleepy space for a long time, and now all eyes are on search and browser and what we can do with AI in browser. And it's going to be fun to watch where the future goes. So we're excited to be here for it. And I'm excited to be here on the podcast today.
So, Neil, to that point, Shift has been focused on this productivity type of angle and kind of ahead of the curve, really, in helping people optimize their digital life in a way.
Yeah, for sure. A bit about Shift and its history is we really have been a powerful browser for power users that want to do more in their browser each and every day. And we've really found that kind of user base of especially tech savvy folks who really want to be productive in their day, in their work, and ultimately optimize different spaces and versions of their Shift workspace to them. And that could be around their apps and their notifications and even their browser layout to build custom modular browser setups per space that really fits their workflow, which is really exciting for our user base. And I think another kind of thing that's coming up more and more, and we might talk about further in the podcast, is the impact of tech and digital products and AI on the environment. So kind of cool cherry on top to Shift and all its productivity features is also our carbon meter, which does its best to estimate, measure, and ultimately offset all of the emissions digitally from the usage of Shift while you use it. So that's kind of another key bit that a lot of people lean towards in their choice to using Shift.
Interesting. So, I mean, has huge implications for this whole agentic world. And when we talk about the ChatGPT Atlas, it's like I've been saying, like, the impact on the environment from just one query in ChatGPT is substantial, and it's kind of goes under the radar and it's just brushed under the rug for users. But then when you start adding in agentic and these querying engines that are setting off chains of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 types of AI prompts or whatever behind the scenes, the environmental impact becomes astronomically greater, like double in size, you would think, and at least in the coming years.
Yeah, for sure. And that is something we learned in part from this survey that we've surveyed to browser users is there is concern about that from consumers and the world at large is kind of what is AI doing to the environment. And in that regard, for Shift to be taking kind of a proactive step to measure what we can in terms of emissions from browser and offset is really exciting. So yeah, couldn't agree more.
Then just one other thing, Neil. So I work online like many people. I think 60+% of people do some form of white collar work, which is now kind of synonymous with being digital first work, right? A lot of people also have side hustles. A lot of people have obviously personal lives that they're trying to disconnect and not let work bleed into. So does shift essentially, when you talk about these spaces, it's really allowing people to kind of separate these lives and not let them bleed, actually draw a line in the sand. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. We have some power users of the Shift browser that might have 8 spaces or 10 spaces, and maybe they're freelancers with multiple clients and they want a space to work in for each and every client in Shift where they enter that space and they are focused on that one client, that one project, and that space, whether it's the tabs they have open, the apps that they have integrated, are all specific to that workflow in that space and that focus zone for deep work for that specific purpose. But it doesn't have to be just work, as you mentioned. It could be a space for shopping, a space for streaming. It can be a space for whatever you want. And some people just do it focused on the email account being the anchor. So everyone's got a work email and a personal email, but multiple people have many more emails than that. So it can be email anchored, or it can just be about the spaces you use for work or for personal reasons, and keeping things super organized to that specific purpose.
Great. So I think that is a perfect segue into one of the first findings that I took away from this study. Your personal life, your work life, your digital life, it's kind of all bleeding into each other. And I think that's one of the big reasons for digital burnout. And I think your study actually, the exact number was 62% of users report feeling digital burnout regularly. It's become really this shared experience, not an exception. You know, what do you have to say about that? Like that seems core to the mission that Shift has been trying to solve for the last 10 years that you guys have been around.
Yeah, I think it's confirming what we already knew at Shift. I think it's probably getting worse, right, over time, which increases the need for products like Shift. But yeah, the report saying things like 62% of people feeling that burnout. You and I, Mike, would agree with that. We feel it at times. People are struggling to unplug. I think, especially with notifications coming from all sorts of apps all day long, a lot from within your browser, sometimes apps on your phone. And then we also find people are switching context all the time at their work or even personally. And that switch of apps or tabs or flows in browser, it's just so chaotic that it's quite overwhelming. Every little second we can save in our work in our browser each and every day adds up to the avoidance of extra long hours and digital burnout. So that's where we've again been proud with Shift, with that concept of focus spaces. In that space, all you have are the apps and notifications configured to help you focus and have deep work in that area of your life. It really, really does give people control, less friction, more focus, and ultimately some time back, which is super important.
For sure. I mean, that's one thing that I always get back to, is the time aspect of all this stuff. And Shift is just time for family, time for everything. And when you're always on in this new work from home, work from remote, wherever society, it becomes harder and harder to do that. And it's conditioning. So it seems as though Shift is kind of attacking that conditioning type of element, really, and helping condition people. So, to combat this digital burnout, I'd love to just explore again, like your report shows people are rethinking what a browser should be. As our digital lives get more complex, they're juggling multiple identities, accounts, projects. What are users looking for now? And I think we're actually to the point of the opening of this conversation. It's like people are finally starting to realize Chrome or the browser experience that they know is not the end of the road. It's actually like it's opening the door to a whole big, huge digital world that you can actually customize and personalize for your life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think, and it's different on mobile versus desktop, but predominantly we play in a space that's desktop focused and it is kind of work focused. But I think it's interesting to even go back a little bit to the history and what we talked about at the beginning. Browsers are hot. People are talking about browsers, but for a long time they weren't. Most people used Chrome because they knew Google. They used Edge because they bought a Windows laptop. They used Safari because they bought a Mac machine. It was pretty limited and nobody really thought about alternative browsers, or browsers could be better than, this notion of one size fits all. So we're entering a space where people are looking, and it is in part thanks to the Atlases or Comets of the world. But that's, Mike, what we learned in the survey to a whole bunch of Americans that are browser users is people are open to switching for personalization right now, and they're open to switching for workflow. And I think our survey had figures above 90% of people are looking for change, and that's new. So I'm thankful to kind of the AI push to push people into that consideration. But that kind of personalization of a browser and your workflow is what Shift's all about.
Yeah, you're totally right. When you think about, the AI browsers, whether they're going to evolve a lot over the next couple of years, but they have helped draw a light and shine a light on a space of the digital world that has been overlooked, not by players like Shift, but it's just drawing mass consumer attention again right now.
Yeah, and I think that's correct, and I think it has done the job for the masses. But I think what's super powerful in our recent, we launched it in July, but it's this kind of builder feature in Shift. We call it, build your own browser, and it's this ability on the web layer, kind of the user interface of Shift, to drag and drop every single browser component that you'd like. If you want tabs on the left, the right, bottom, you want your search omnibox, top, right, left, bottom, your apps, your bookmarks. Do you want a refresh icon? Do you want a zoom icon? Like, however you want to modify and personalize your browser, you can do that within our kind of building ecosystem. And that's what we heard people were really screaming for from this report is I want to make my browser my own. So whether that's my spaces, my apps, even the look and feel of my browser, I like to put my touch on it, to make it personal to me, to make it work for me. And that's a special thing that people are starting to ask for in a big way.
It's crazy when you think about how long it's taken to get to this point. Of course, gradually over the last 10 years or so, we've spent more and more of our lives online and on a browser and the work from home movement. But it's like you've seen this personalization aspect be reflected in things like Fortnite and video games and all of these different individual aspects, but not the entryway to those digital aspects, which is kind of just cool to see it actually coming this
Happening.
circle.
We're very excited to have all eyes on the browser space, and at first it was just the search space. It was kind of just Perplexity chat and ChatGPT chat, and then all of a sudden, so quickly, like it's wild how quickly this has moved. To your point at the beginning, those companies are saying, "Hey, we're getting so much use in chat, in tabs, in other people's browsers, or in our own kind of applications, but why not consider owning the browser?" And that's what they're trying to do. And we're just excited that people are going to have more choice overall. And of course, we're biased. We hope the choice comes to Shift and we can increase our user base through this extra attention as a top alternative browser. But it is wild times, Mike, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, like in marketing, call it, there is this idea. It's like you always have to ask yourself a question. Do people know about the problem? Right. And like that can be your first step a lot of times. And if they don't know that there's a problem and identify the problem, then you have to educate them. And that education has been happening super fast over the past few months. So now it's all of a sudden shifted and all of these browsers are in the consideration set, but the consideration set maybe didn't have as many people in it just 4, 5, 6 months ago.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's been a powerful thing with our state of browsing report and this survey is people they are aware of the problem as well. And one that people might think is a problem of the past, but it still exists to this day is you can picture yourself, your friends, your family, picture your tab kind of row at the top of your browser and how many you might have there and how small they become. And as soon as that starts occurring, you don't know what tab is what. You maybe have 7, 8, 9 different Google Sheet tabs, and there's no way that you know what's what. And that is a huge problem that so many people still have in their browser. And Mike, it's not just the quantity of tabs, is some are personal, some are for that job, some are for the other job. It all just mixes and matches. And again, that's back to Shift Spaces. You might still have a similar amount of tabs open, but they'll be all per space, organized efficiently, and maybe some tab grouping, etc., to really keep that more manageable, because that tab chaos is one of the majors people struggle with, and one of the major reasons once people go to shift, they never can go back.
Yeah. And then on that point, Neil, so I think that's a great segue into the last thing I wanted to chat about today was how these AI companies and the virality of things like ChatGPT and then the launch of their browser, has created this broad awareness of the fact that there is choice for browsers, right? But at the same time, with the launch of Atlas, there's a lot of hidden energy costs, like we discussed earlier, that are kind of just swept under the rug. And it seems as though people and consumers, like, those are consideration sets for them when choosing a new browser, right? Like, it seems as though things like energy consumption and even privacy, I think we're going to see a huge push in, magnifying glass on privacy regulation within these AI browsers and searches and stuff. So, like, what did your study kind of uncover for you in the AI integrated browser race, consumers' adoption of it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that we were a B Corp company in our connection to Red Brick, our parent company in Victoria. So it's our DNA that we really put environment first, people first as well. So we've been just aware of climate concerns with AI since the beginning, and aware of digital concerns for the environment since the beginning, where maybe majority of people just think, oh, climate, we've got issues with cars and with eating meat and kind of those majors. But we've been pretty aware that tech has a role, and we have a responsibility in this as well. So I think we're kind of happy that AI is making more people aware that there's something we have to consider here. If you've got a great browser that's doing more than others in that regard, that can kind of tip the scale. In terms of, like, I would say general consumers mostly to this day are still using kind of chat. And it's for answers, it's for help, it's for opinions, it's for research, all of the things that we're all kind of using AI chat for. That can, of course, occur within integrated apps in the Shift browser with the chat GPTs, etc., as we speak. On the privacy front, you've probably heard, but like there's been a few recent prompt injection attacks from malicious sites in browser. So I know people are worried about that kind of version of AI, where agentic AI can start to do things that maybe you don't want to occur. And what role does a browser have to play in that regard? We've partnered at Shift with Google's Web Risk API. So we actually warn users before they visit any malicious sketchy site on the internet. And that's a very simple but powerful step we've taken to say, hey, if there's some malicious prompt engineering occurring to speak to agents within the Shift browser, we're going to do our utmost to never let you go to that site. So we're aware people are concerned, and we're doing our part to kind of protect users using AI in Shift. And I think every browser has that responsibility.
Yeah, it's like Silicon Valley, that show. Have you ever seen Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
Son of Anton orders like thousands of pounds of meat to the office.
Yeah. And that, in the scheme of things, that one's not that bad. But yeah, imagine what it can be. So yeah, I mean, we're talking a lot today about how exciting the space has become. And again, thankful to AI for that push, and that kind of shining the light and the spotlight back on search and back on browser, because it's such a powerful ecosystem. Like, what software are you in more than anything each and every day? And generally, for people who work, to your point, white collar, that answer is browser. Browsers are powerful as this gateway to the internet and to work, but it's not without concern, right? To our point here.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're after this conversation, you're really mirroring a bunch of narratives that you hear about AI broadly, right? Of how it can be additive to your work to save you time, but really it can be additive to a browser. It's not the end all be all for a browser. It starts even a layer earlier. It can have a personalization impact on it, but you still can take the browser into your own hands, sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, we on the AI front, of course, like any tech company, we're considering how it empowers our people and our developers. The huge majority of the Shift team are developers. So how can they use AI to build Shift faster and to make it a better product and to move with speed and greater velocity in the actual browser itself, because our roots are so deep in this whole world of productivity and spaces and app integrations, and now in modularity and building your own personalized, customized browser, and that flavor of kind of our carbon meter feature and climate awareness. We're in our beginning stages of what Shift can really do on the AI front in Shift as a browser that's unique. It's more than just chat. How can we really kind of build on top of the extra things you can do because you are a browser, but do it in a really responsible way? So we're in that road mapping as we speak, but we couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking the time today to talk to me and kind of shed some light on this, space in the internet that is now the cool kid again.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time. So I'd love to chat with you again shortly because this is all going to play out quickly, if anything, like the last few months. So yeah, would love to stay in touch and talk about the latest updates in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me, Mike. And I also can't wait to watch where the whole browser world goes. And I hope Shift's a big part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.